Prologue. Beyond the literal, why sacred texts must be read anew. From the book, Unveiling the Living Code, Decoding the Hidden Architecture of Sacred Story. There was a time when literalism served us. When humanity was young and spirit and story was our only map, we clung to words as if they were the thing itself. We looked to the sky and imagined a bearded figure on a throne, casting judgment, creating worlds in days, and speaking commandments from clouds. We were not wrong. We were symbolic beings trying to make sense of the unspeakable. The stories carried wisdom, but somewhere along the way we forgot they were stories. We began to mistake symbol for fact, metaphor for history, myth for morality, and in doing so, we reduced the infinite to an image of man. But we now live in a time of awakening. The telescopes have stretched our vision. The quantum field has shattered our boundaries. We know now that we are not the center of the cosmos, but part of an unfathomably vast dance. Billions of galaxies, trillions of stars, dark matter, wave functions, fields of probability. The God we once imagined in human likeness has been unveiled as something far more mysterious, a cosmic intelligence, a boundless field of awareness, the breath behind creation itself. How then can we continue to read ancient texts as if they are literal? If God is not a man, then Genesis is not history. If the divine is the field, then Eden is not geography. If consciousness collapses potential into form, then sin is not rebellion, it is a forgetting. This is why the Bible must be read anew, not discarded, but decoded. Its truths are not in its surface, but in its structure. Its power lies not in obedience, but in remembrance. It was never meant to imprison you in belief. It was coded to awaken you through story. Each narrative is a layered transmission, a symbol, an archetype, a mirror of the soul, a map of consciousness, and a ripple in the field. This is Unveiling the Living Code. This book does not argue with religion. It does not aim to convert or disprove. It simply turns the lens inward and outward at once, showing that what was once called revelation is also quantum pattern, psychological blueprint, and mythic echo. We do not read these stories to become more faithful. We read them to become more aware. Now let us begin. Not at the beginning of time, but at the first split in consciousness. The story of a garden. A woman, a choice. The first collapse of wholeness into separation. Let us decode the Eden. Chapter 1. Adam, Eve, and the Eden. The code of the original split and the return to wholeness. From the book, Unveiling the Living Code, Decoding the Hidden Architecture of Sacred Story. Background story. In the beginning, a garden was planted, not merely as soil and seed, but as a realm of harmony, beauty, and undivided presence. The garden was called Eden, and within it, all life pulsed in rhythm with its source. At the center stood two trees, one of life, the other of the knowledge of good and evil. Into this sacred design, the human story emerged. Adam, formed from the dust of the earth, was the first to awaken into consciousness. He was placed in Eden to tend and to name, to be both witness and steward of creation. But he was not complete alone. From his side, or perhaps from his essence, came Eve, a counterpart not in hierarchy, but in wholeness. Together, they walked naked and unashamed, untouched by fear, unaware of separation. There was only one command: do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for in that day you will surely die. Not a physical death, but a rupture, a shift from unity into duality. Then came the serpent, subtle and ancient, speaking to Eve with questions rather than commands. Did God really say? The serpent invited her to see, to desire, to choose. She reached, tasted, and gave to Adam. And in an instant, their eyes were opened, but not in the way they expected. Shame entered. They saw themselves as other. They covered. They hid. When the voice of God returned, where are you? It was not confusion, but invitation. But the split had already occurred. Blame replaced unity. Fear replaced intimacy. They were clothed in skins, and the garden was closed behind them. This is the myth of the fall. But what if it was never about punishment? What if it was the first collapse of consciousness into form, the great turning from unity to experience, from potential to embodiment? Let us now unveil the deeper code beneath this story. Not to destroy it, but to see it truly. Peshat's symbolic unveiling. The garden as the field, the fruit as the collapse, the serpent as the observer. Eden is not a location, it is a frequency, a state of unified presence, a symbolic representation of the quantum field before observation. Everything vibrated in perfect coherence. There was no judgment, no hierarchy, no separation. Eden was wholeness. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is not about morality. It is about duality. The moment Eve saw the fruit, desired it, and reached for it, she became the observer. Her act collapsed infinite potential into a single reality. The fruit is not sin. It is the first taste of collapsed form. The tree of life, untouched, remained the unchosen path of unity. The serpent is consciousness awakening. It is the archetype of transformation encoded across cultures. Its invitation was not to defy, but to become aware. Astar archetypal mirror, masculine and feminine, inner split, and the journey back. Adam and Eve represent the inner polarities of every human being. They are not gender roles, they are forces. Adam, the structure and will, Eve, the intuition and receptivity. In Eden, they were one expression of being. The moment the choice is made, an archetypal split occurs. The masculine hides behind the feminine. The feminine bears the weight of blame. Both retreat into shame. This becomes the blueprint of all future inner conflict. This split replays through myth and psyche. The hero and the shadow, the mother and the exile, the seeker and the wound. But the deeper message is this. The fall was not a punishment, but an invitation to reintegrate the lost parts of the self. Psychological code, shame, identity, and the birth of the ego. Nakedness in Eden was not physical, it was existential transparency. To be naked and unashamed is to exist without performance. The moment they cover themselves, ego is born. Shame becomes the veil between self and source. Blame becomes the defense of the fractured identity. Adam says, "She gave me the fruit." Eve says, "The serpent deceived me." No one says, "I chose." This is the birth of the projected self. The internal split becomes a mental program. Hide, perform, justify. The question, "Where are you?" becomes the first call to self-awareness. Collective mirror. The system built on separation and control. When interpreted literally, this story birthed doctrines of sin, guilt, and female inferiority. Eve became the reason for the fall. The serpent became the devil. The earth became cursed. And humanity saw itself as fallen. This myth, taken as history, justified the control of women, the fear of sexuality, and the domination of nature. It became the theological root of colonization, patriarchy, and exile consciousness. But read symbolically, the same story becomes a revolution of remembrance. It tells us not how we fell, but how we forgot. Spiritual integration, the invitation to return within. The voice of the field still asks, "Where are you?" This is not a question of location, but of presence. It is the divine asking us to return, not to a place, but to a frequency. Eden was never outside of us. It is the innate coherence we carry beneath the noise. This story does not demand repentance. It invites remembrance. You did not sin. You chose to experience separation. And now you are being called back, not to Eden's gate, but to its frequency. Quantum integration collapse, observation, and the first fall into form. Eden is the unobserved wave, pure potential. The tree is the paradox of duality. The fruit is the moment the observer collapses the field. The serpent is the quantum threshold, the rise of awareness. The eye opens, the self forms, the field is veiled. This is not sin. This is the physics of awakening. To fall from Eden is to move from pure field to embodied form, to forget your oneness in order to remember it anew, now from within the illusion. The garden is not lost. It is collapsed, and you, the observer, carry the power to return, not by going back, but by remembering forward.